2020 hasn't been a great year, and the reasons we all know. But before Corona, just at the start of this year, we lost Sir Roger Scruton, an English writer and philosopher, widely known for his traditional views and conservative views on beauty and art, and especially aesthetics. And in fact, even if you don't hold conservative views, I'm sure you would have a great time reading his works. He talked about beauty with an objective view in mind. That is, that beauty has some objective standards. It's not always subjective. And that's the traditional view we talk about. And especially the consequences of this are seen in art. And he was a real critic of the modern art where we have dispensed all the traditional standards of beauty and it's just the subjective merit of the art. So it's quite interesting to see his philosophy with respect to beauty, and I'm going to talk about that today. In fact, I'm going to read his short book on beauty. I'm not sure if you're aware, Oxford University Press has been coming up with these very short books. It's called a short introduction series. So a short introduction on philosophy, on a particular religion, let's say Buddhism, Islam, and so on. And they publish these really short introductions on those particular topics. So this one on beauty is written by Sir Roger Scruton. Let me read a few pages from the first chapter of this book. And the chapter is called Judging Beauty. Let's begin. We discern beauty in concrete objects and abstract ideas, in works of nature and works of art, in things, animals, and people, in objects, qualities, and actions. As the list expands to take in just about every ontological category, it becomes obvious that we are not describing a property like shape, size, or color, uncontroversially present to all who can find their way around the physical world. For one thing, how could there be a single property exhibited by so many disparate types of thing? Well, why not? After all, we describe songs, landscapes, moods, scents, and souls as blue. Does this not illustrate the way in which a single property can occur under many categories? No is the answer. For while there is a sense in which all those things can be blue, they cannot be blue in the way that my coat is blue. In referring to so many types of thing as blue, we are using a metaphor, one that requires a leap of the imagination if it is to be rightly understood. Metaphors make connections which are not contained in the fabric of reality but created by our own associative powers. The important question about a metaphor is not what property it stands for, but what experience it suggests. But in none of its normal uses is beautiful a metaphor, even if, like many a metaphor, it ranges over indefinitely many categories of object. So why do we call things beautiful? What point are we making? And what state of mind does our judgment express? There is an appealing idea about beauty which goes back to Plato and Plotinus, and which became incorporated by various routes into Christian theological thinking. According to this idea, beauty is an ultimate value, something that we pursue for its own sake, and for the pursuit of which no further reason need be given. Beauty should therefore be compared to truth and goodness, one member of a trio of ultimate values which justify our rational inclinations. Why believe P? Because it is true. Why want X? Because it is good. Why look at Y? Because it is beautiful. In some way, philosophers have argued those answers are on a par. Each brings a state of mind into the ambit of reason by connecting it to something that is in our nature, as rational beings, to pursue. Someone who asked, why believe what is true or why want what is good, has failed to understand the nature of reasoning. He doesn't see that if we are to justify our beliefs and desires at all, then our reasons must be anchored in the true and the good. Does the same go for beauty? If someone asks me, why are you interested in X? Is because it is beautiful a final answer? One that is immune to counter argument, like the answers because it is good and because it is true? To say as much is to overlook the subversive nature of beauty. Someone charmed by a myth may be tempted to believe it, and in this case, beauty is the enemy of truth. A man attracted to woman may be tempted to condone her vices, and in this case, beauty is the enemy of goodness. Goodness and truth never compete. We assume, and the pursuit of the one is always compatible with the proper respect for the other. The pursuit of beauty, however, is far more questionable. From Kierkegaard to Wilde, the aesthetic way of life in which beauty is pursued as the supreme value has been opposed to the life of virtue, the life of myths, stories and rituals, the need for consolation and harmony, the deep desire for order. All have drawn people to religious beliefs regardless of whether those beliefs are true. The prose of Flaubert, the imagery of Baudelaire, the harmonies of Wagner, the sensuous forms of Canova have all been accused of immorality by those who believe that they paint wickedness in alluring colors. We don't have to agree with such judgments in order to acknowledge their point. The status of beauty as an ultimate value is questionable, in the way that the status of truth and goodness are not. Let us at least say that this particular path to the understanding of beauty is not easily available to a modern thinker. The confidence with which philosophers once trod it is due to an assumption made explicit already in the Enneads of Plotinus, that truth, beauty, and goodness are attributes of the deity, ways in which the divine unity makes itself known to the human soul. That theological vision was edited for Christian use by St. Thomas Aquinas and embedded in the subtle and comprehensive reasoning for which that philosopher is justly famous. But it is not a vision that we can assume, and I propose for the time being to set it to one side, considering the concept of beauty without making any theological claims. Aquinas' own view of the matter is worth noting, however, since it touches on a deep difficulty in the philosophy of beauty. Aquinas regarded truth, goodness, and unity as transcendentals, features of reality possessed by all things, since they are aspects of being, ways in which the supreme gift of being is made manifest to the understandings. His view on beauty are more implied than stated. Nevertheless, he wrote as though beauty is such a transcendental. He also thought that beauty and goodness are, in the end, identical, being separate ways in which a single positive reality is rationally apprehended. If that is so, however, what is ugliness? And why do we flee from it? And how can there be dangerous beauties, corrupting beauties, and immoral beauties? Or if such things are impossible, why are they impossible? And what is it that misleads us into thinking the opposite? I don't say that Aquinas has no answer to those questions, but they illustrate the difficulties encountered by any philosophy that places beauty on the same metaphysical plane as truth, so as to plant it in the heart of being as such. The natural response is to say that beauty is a matter of appearance, not of being, and perhaps also that in exploring beauty, we are investigating the sentiments of people rather than the deep structure of the world. That said, we should take a lesson from the philosophy of truth. Attempts to define truth, to tell us what truth deeply and essentially is, have seldom carried conviction, since they always end by presupposing what they need to prove. How can you define truth without already assuming the distinction between a true definition and a false one? Wrestling with this problem, philosophers have suggested that a theory of truth must conform to certain logical platitudes, and that these platitudes, innocuous though they may seem to the untheoretical eye, provide the ultimate test of any philosophical theory. For example, there is the platitude that if a sentence S is true, so is the sentence S is true, and vice versa. There are the platitudes that one truth cannot contradict another, that assertions claim to be true, that our assertions are not true simply because we say so. Philosophers say profound seeming things about truth, but often the air of profundity comes at the cost of denying one or other of those elementary platitudes. It would help to define our subject, therefore, if we were to begin from a list of comparable platitudes about beauty against which our theories might be tested. Here are 6 of them. 1. Beauty pleases us. 2. One thing can be more beautiful than another. 3. Beauty is always a reason for attending to the thing that possesses it. 4. Beauty is the subject matter of a judgment, the judgment of taste. 5. The judgment of taste is about the beautiful object, not about the subject's state of mind. In describing an object as beautiful, I am describing it, not me. 6. Nevertheless, there are no second-hand judgments of beauty. There is no way that you can argue me into a judgment that I have not made for myself. Nor can I become an expert in beauty simply by studying what others have said about beautiful objects and without experiencing and judging for myself. This last platitude may be doubted. I might swear by a certain music critic whose judgments of pieces and performances I take as gospel. Isn't that like adopting my scientific beliefs from the opinions of experts or my legal beliefs from the judgments of the courts? The answer is no. When I put my trust in a critic, this is a tantamount to saying that I defer to his judgment, even when I have made no judgment of my own. But my own judgment waits upon experience. It is only when I have heard the piece in question in the moment of appreciation that my borrowed opinion can actually become a judgment of mine. Hence the comedy of this dialogue from Jane Austen's Emma. Mr. Dixon, you say, is not, strictly speaking, handsome? Handsome. Oh, no, far from it. Certainly plain. I told you he was plain. My dear, you said that Miss Campbell would not allow him to be plain, and that you yourself. Oh, as for me, my judgment is worth nothing. Where I have a great regard, I always think a person well looking. But I have what I believed the general opinion when I called him plain. In this dialogue, the second speaker, Jane, is ignoring her experience of Mr. Dixon's looks, so that in describing him as plain, she is not making a judgment of her own but reporting the judgment of others. So that was the part I was reading from the book, and you can notice that there is a paradox. That is there, or should there, or in fact can there be an objective standard for beauty? And if so, how can that be possible without the interference of the observer? So beauty is observed, but at the same time it needs to have some objective standard. How does Sir Roger Scruton avoid this paradox? He does so, and for that you might have to read his book. But nevertheless, it's an interesting topic, especially concerning art. What are the boundaries, and when do you call a piece of work art? When do you call it beautiful? These really are difficult questions. And I suggest you to do the reading, and then we can have further conversations on these ideas. I'm not sure we are going to get exact answers anytime, or at least anytime soon, but we can always make a start. And thank you for listening. Goodbye.